Ananti Koti Vaishnava Vrind Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Prem Se Kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Sham Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Sri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Sri Navadvip Sri Mayapur Dham Ki Jai, Sri Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai, Sri Mathura Dham Ki Jai, Sri Dwarka Dham Ki Jai, Ganga Mai Ki Jai, Yamuna Mai Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Tulasi Devi Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Gaura Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Navastavyam ihasmabhir jijivishubhir aryaka prabhasam sumahatpunyam yasyamodvaya Dvaiva Machidam Navastavyam ihasmabhir Jibibishubhir aryaka Prabhasam sumahatpunyam Yasyamodhyaiva Machidam Navastavyam ihasmabhir jijibishubhir aryaka prabhasam sumahatpunyam yasyamodhyaiva machiram. Navastavyam should not reside. Iha, here, asmabhi, we, Jiji Vishubhir, desiring to live, Aryaka, O venerable ones, Prabhasam, to the holy place called Prabhasa, Sumahat, very much, Punyam, pious, Yasyama, let us go, Adya, today, Eva, even, Machiram, without delay. My dear respected elders, we must not remain any longer in this place if we wish to keep our lives intact. Let us go this very day to the most pious place, Prabhasa. We have no time to delay. We are reading in continuation of yesterday, the second part of the purport. In the conclusion to his work, Mahabharat Tatparya Nirnaya, Sri Madhvacharya Pad has written the following purport to the Moshala Lila. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, in order to bewilder the demons and ensure that the word of his own devotees and of the Brahmins is maintained, created a body of material energy into which the arrow was shot. But the Lord's actual forearm form was never touched by the arrow of Jara, who is actually the Lord's devotee, Bhrigu Rishi. In a previous age, Bhrigu Muni had placed his foot on the chest of Lord Vishnu in order to counteract the offense of improperly placing his foot on the Lord's chest. Bhrigu had to take birth as a degraded hunter. But even though a great devotee willingly accepts such a low birth, the personality of Godhead cannot tolerate seeing his devotee in such a fallen condition. Thus, the personality of Godhead arranged that at the end of Dwapara Yuga, when the Lord was winding up his manifest pastimes, his devotee, Bhrigu, in the form of the hunter Jara, would cast the arrow into a material body created by the Lord's illusory energy. Thus the hunter would become remorseful, gain release from his degraded birth, and go back to Vaikuntha Loka. Therefore, to please his devotee Bhrigu and to confuse the demons, the Supreme Lord manifested his Mosala Lila at Prabhasa. But it should be understood that this is an illusory pastime. The personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, from his very appearance on the earth, did not manifest any of the material qualities of ordinary human beings. The Lord did not appear from the womb of his mother. Rather, by his inconceivable power, he descended into the maternity room. At the time of giving up this mortal world, he similarly manifested an illusory situation for the sake of bewildering the demons. To bewilder the non-devotees,
the Lord created an illusory body out of his material energy, while simultaneously remaining personally in his own Satchitananda body. And thus he manifested the downfall of an illusory material form. This pretense effectively bewilders foolish demons. But Lord Sri Krishna's actual transcendental eternal body of bliss never experiences death. Also, at Prabhasa Kshetra, there is the holy place known as Bhrigu Tirtha, which was manifested by Lord Parasuram. The place at which the two rivers, Saraswati and Hiranya, flow together into the ocean is named Bhrigu Tirtha. And there the hunter cast his arrow. There is an elaborate description of Prabhasa Tirtha in the Prabhasa Kanda of the Skanda Purana. There are also many Palasrutis given within the Mahabharata in connection with Prabhasa Tirtha. Palasrutis are scriptural statements that promise various auspicious results for one who performs a particular pious activity. In the following verses, the Lord himself will explain the particular benefits to be derived from visiting Prabhasa Kshetra and performing religious activities there. Om Agyantimirandasya Jnananjana Chalakaya Chakshurum Milidam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Jutha Padakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavanscha Sri Rupam Sagrajataham Sahagana Raghunathan Bitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakan Bitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Kopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Chakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Vacha Patithanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta-vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Today we are reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11, Chapter 6, entitled The Yadu Dynasty Retires to Prabhasa. Text 35. whatever Krishna does can be understood from limitless perspectives. Because Krishna is limitless. His words are limitless. His pastimes are limitless. How is it that Krishna can put the whole universe in his own mouth? And at that, just a very small child's mouth. Such a small child that he would playfully eat dirt just to disturb his mother. Krishna can put the entire universe in his little tiny mouth, and at the same time, Krishna expands himself as Virat Rupa, where he's the size of the entire universe. And simultaneously, Krishna as the Paramatma situates himself in the heart of every living being, even the little mosquitoes, and situates himself in and between every atom. And he's doing all these things at the same time. What can you or me do? Krishna is the controller of all controllers. Everything. It is rightfully said that not even a blade of grass can move without the sanction of the Lord. Imagine all the blades of grass. Not only in India, but in the whole world. Not only in the whole world, but in the entire universe. Not just this universe, but all universes in cosmic manifestation. Not a blade of grass moves without his sanction. And even where there's no grass, like Antarctica or the Arctic, not a single flake of snow can move without his sanction. Everything is under Krishna's control. Sarvasya chaham edishani vishto matas mitir jnanam apohanam cha vidaishcha sarver aham eva vedyo vedanta krit vedabedeva chaham. And Krishna remembers everything that's ever been done. He doesn't need a computer memory to access data. He's the one who gives power to all the computer memories. Without him, the power shuts down and the computer memory is useless. He's the cause of all causes. He remembers everything. He remembers the blade of grass that moved at the Mafatlal bungalow in Pune 25 years ago as Giriraj Swami stepped on it. That's Krishna. He remembers every thought of every living being forever. So whatever Krishna does is inconceivable and limitless. A devotee sees it from the perspective of how to love Krishna and serve Krishna. And people who are very much inclined, addicted to trying to be the controller, the proprietor, and the enjoyer of Krishna's resources within this material energy, in order to justify that, Krishna gives them a whole different conception. If Krishna was to manifest himself in a very universal form kind of situation, it would leave people very little choice to surrender to him. But even then, he manifested a universal form to Duryodhana, and still Duryodhana. He understood Krishna's very great, but he did not surrender. So in order for this material world to give us free will to either love Krishna or live independent of Krishna's will, Krishna reveals the world in different ways. Krishna reveals himself through material nature also. Rasoham apsukonteya prabhashmi sashishuryayo. In Bhagavad-Gita, Krishna tells, I am the taste of water. I am that quenching power within liquid. And Srila Prabhupada explains, if a person drinking wine, even if that person thinks that Krishna is the taste of this, then in a very short amount of time he'll stop drinking wine. Because he understands Krishna's here and he doesn't want me to do this. But for another person, he doesn't think Krishna's the taste of wine. Because if you think Krishna's the taste of wine, then you understand Sarva Loka Maheshwaram, Bhoktaramna, Jagatapasan. Everything's meant for Krishna's pleasure. Therefore, not for me to exploit for my pleasure. So in order for people to have this quality of exploiting the resources of material nature, Krishna causes us to forget the simple truth that everything is Krishna's property. That Krishna is present within the heart of every being. Simultaneously, Krishna is revealing himself to his devotee, and he's not revealing himself from those whose ambition is to lord it over material nature. And for a devotee, even when Krishna does not reveal himself, Yugayatam nimeshena chakshusha prabhrushayatam sunyayatam jagat sarvam govinda virahename. For a devotee, when Krishna does not reveal himself, a devotee deepens his or her love for Krishna in feelings of viraha bhav, or love and separation. But a devotee never forgets Krishna. Never forgets that I am simply existing for Krishna's pleasure. So, in this Leela that we are reading, Krishna wants to give, from a scriptural and historical perspective, atheistic people some evidence to prove that Krishna was just a person like us. And then they could use this justification in so many ways. If Krishna is a person like us, who departs from this world, something like us, then that means we could also dance in the Ras Leela. We can, in fact, have our own little Ras Leelas. But a devotee understands that Krishna has staged this pastime just so people like that can justify justify their own independent way of misusing their free will. And it also gives devotees a very clear warning of how Krishna's material energy is so powerful, so subtle, so inconceivably bewildering, that each and every one of us, we cannot take for granted Krishna consciousness. Sharanagati, Daivi Heshu Gunamayi, Mama Maya Duratyaya, Mamevame Prapadyate, Mayameta Tarantite. In order to not get caught up in this web of material implications, we must sincerely take shelter of Krishna. We take shelter of Krishna initially by hearing from those personalities that Krishna has empowered to represent him. Mental speculation, and usually mental speculation is even more bewildering when we have a very, very strong intellect. Yes, simple people, they mentally speculate all the time too. But when a person with very powerful intellect is mentally speculating, can actually convince the whole world of their speculations. So how careful we must be. Therefore, in Bhagavad-Gita, Krishna tells, Tadvidi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattva darshana. That if we want to understand the truth, we must hear from a guru. And the way we hear from a guru is we must hear in a submissive mode. We must put ourselves in the shelter of such a personality and inquire submissively, with an eagerness to serve, with an eagerness to apply these teachings into our life. In Bhagavad-Gita, Arjuna, such intellect, such spiritual status he had. And he was Krishna's dear friend. But Krishna wanted to set the stage. If we truly want to hear the words of Krishna and be transformed, we must hear the Gita as Arjuna heard Gita. Arjuna was put in a condition of crisis, a crisis that was beyond his control. There was nothing he could do to come out of it. He tried. Krishna staged it so nicely. The Kurus and the Pandavas, each one with millions and millions of soldiers on their sides, were standing facing each other, and their horses and their elephants and the foot soldiers, their chariots. And Arjuna said, please bring me between the armies so I could see who has come to assemble for this war. Krishna drove the chariot right in the middle. And similarly, in our lives, Krishna he's within our hearts. Ishvara sarva bhutanam hrideshe arjuna. Krishna's within our heart. The body's like a chariot. And Krishna will move this chariot into these situations that are very, very difficult to be able to understand. What am I supposed to do now? You see, Arjuna represents each one of us. Krishna brought you and me between those armies in that chariot. And Arjuna, who was very intellectual, he had a lot of common sense. He had very high realizations. He was trying to figure out what to do. And he couldn't. And because he was such a responsible man, he was really in the crisis of his life. Should I kill these people I love? Should I abandon my duty and just go off into the Himalayan mountains? First he was ready to fight. Then he was convinced and ready to leave. He had so many sociological, philosophical, scriptural arguments to prove it. But then he realized he didn't know what to do. This confusion was beyond him. Karapanya doso pahata swabhava. I'm bewildered. Shishyaste hamsam tvam. He said, I'm your disciple now. Please instruct me. So Arjuna taught us how we must hear from Krishna and his representatives if we want the true transformation to take place in our heart. Doesn't matter who we are. In this particular section of Srimad Bhagavatam, a similar situation is happening. There was the Bhagavad-Gita. Now, equally as important for devotees is the Uddhava Gita. Arjuna was Krishna's best friend in Hastinapur. Uddhava was Krishna's best friend in Mathura and then Dwarka. And Uddhava is really being put in a more difficult situation than Arjuna. Arjuna didn't know what to do, but Krishna was still with him. Later on, we find, after Krishna leaves this world, Arjuna was completely bewildered, bereft of any sense of direction because Krishna was gone. But then he remembered the teachings of Bhagavad-Gita and he felt Krishna is still with me in Vani, in his words. So here, Uddhava, this story is setting the stage for the Uddhava Gita. It's going to begin in just a few pages. Krishna's telling the senior members, Uddhava wasn't there because he's Krishna's peer, Krishna's equal. But he heard from the senior members what Krishna told them. Krishna was telling the most respected members of the highest position of the Yadu dynasty that we have been cursed by Brahmins. And a curse of a Brahmin is impossible to undo. That's what Krishna's telling. What is impossible for Krishna? We discussed yesterday. Nothing is impossible for Krishna. But if nothing's impossible for Krishna, then Krishna can make something impossible for him. If Krishna cannot make something impossible for him, then there's something that's impossible for Krishna. And Krishna can make something impossible for him, and at the same time, he could make anything impossible for him possible. But if he likes, he could make that impossible thing that he makes possible to be impossible. For us, these contradictions are very painful situations of life. For Krishna, they are lila. They're just playful, loving pastimes. In the spiritual world, Krishna's whole life is lila, just loving pastimes. Whatever lila he does is ultimately out of his pure love for all living beings. Samoham sarva bhuteshu. Krishna is equal to everyone. But still, for those who love him, Krishna reciprocates with that love. Krishna is equal to everyone because he gives everyone the opportunity to love. And if we love, Krishna agrees to be under the control of our love. But if we don't agree to love, then we are under control of Krishna's material illusory energy, which is activated by time, which is causing the annihilation of everything and everyone. Under the function of the three gunas, goodness, passion, and ignorance, which puts us in limitless varieties of situations. So Krishna tells, it's an impossible situation. We've been cursed by Brahmins. Krishna's own son, Samba, he was very much a part of committing this aparad to Narada Muni and the Brahmins. They were being playful, but their play was sarcastic. It wasn't just innocent play, it was kind of a sarcastic play. Because they thought that they were so great, being the sons of Krishna, being the Yadu dynasty, the most powerful people on the whole universe. They thought that they had a right to do this sarcastic little game with the Brahmins. They're devotees. It's a good lesson. Just because we're devotees, just because we have influence over other people, just because we have some knowledge, just because we could perform some austerities, because we could sing nice or dance nice or dress the deities nice or manage nice, doesn't mean that we have special rights, especially when it comes to how we treat other people. Whoever we are, if we have the wrong consciousness in which we deal with people, then we get reaction. The Yadus were not just devotees. They were Krishna's family members. Samba was not just a family member, he was Krishna's son. So they thought that they had some rights, and in that they became, really what it was, they became loose in their behavior. Just thinking they could just say anything, do anything, no problem. Who can do anything to us? They wanted to show their superiority. But it backfired. They dressed up Samba as a lady, and she looked just like a lady. And she looked pregnant. Will this be a boy or a girl? They asked the sages. You know everything. There's only two choices, boy or girl. In their question, they didn't say, is this going to be a boy or a girl or something else? They just gave two choices. Is this going to be boy or girl? If they said boy or girl, then they would just be laughed at. It's a boy. He's a boy. He's not even pregnant. So Narada Muni and his comrades, the great sages, they understood Krishna's purpose. It will be a lump of iron that will be the cause of destruction of your entire dynasty. That's all. They didn't stay to discuss the matter any longer. They just proclaimed the curse, and that was it. Now it wouldn't have been so striking until there was a lump of iron that was there coming out of Samba. So Krishna's telling, this is what happened. We should go to Prabhasa Kshetra, because that's where so many sinful and offensive activities have been atoned for. We should go there immediately. We can't waste any time. Krishna activated. And now the entire Yadu dynasty is arranging to go on boats to the mainland and then arrange chariots to greet them there, to bring them to Prabhasa Kshetra. And when Uddhava heard about all this, he understood what was happening. He knew that the whole Yadu dynasty was about to destroy themselves, and that Krishna was going to leave the world. His best friend. Uddhava saw what happened when Krishna left the gopis. Because he went to Vrindavan, and he saw the love of the gopis. But he saw that the gopis' love, the only way they could maintain their lives were the thought and the hope that Krishna would return, because he did promise to return. But this situation's even more difficult, because Krishna's not just going back to Vrindavan, he's not just going to another place, he's leaving the universe. He's winding up his pastimes. Finished. He's not going to be anywhere anymore. Uddhava, in certain ways, was even in a more distressful condition than Arjuna. And Uddhava approaches Krishna. And essentially, like Arjuna was telling Krishna what he was going to do, Uddhava was begging Krishna, let me go with you. Get me out of this material world. I'm your friend. I just want to be with you. I have no attachment to anything of this world. If you're leaving the world, please let me go with you. And like Arjuna, who gave so many arguments, but Krishna had another plan. Krishna had another plan for Uddhava also. Arjuna said, I don't want to fight. Krishna said, you fight. Uddhava said, let me go with you. Let me go back to Godhead, or wherever you go, with you. I don't want to stay here. And Krishna said, you stay here. Very difficult. Surrendering to Krishna is not an easy thing. But not surrendering to Krishna is also not an easy thing. So this is something devotees have to come to grips with. Nothing is easy. Nothing good is easy. If you think by not being a devotee your life will be easy, you're in great illusion. Because life is really a hard struggle for existence in this world. It's not easy. And if you think by becoming a devotee life will be easy, the only way you could think that way is if you just joined our movement yesterday. Life's just not easy. Things happen in material life that we could have never expected. Why?
And when we become devotees, things happen that we never expected. Why? This is not what I expected. This is not what I signed up for. But if everything was according to what you signed up for, there would be no real surrender in your heart. What does it mean, Krishna, I'm yours? Maro birako bijo ichatoha nityada sapratitua adhikar. My Lord, if you want to protect me, you can protect me. If you want to kill me, then you could kill me. I'm your servant unconditionally. Yes, how can I please you? That's sharanagati, that is surrender. So this very difficult situation is really opening Uddhava's heart to have a very, very deep, profound talk with Krishna. And by the grace of Shukadev Goswami, Vyasadev, by the grace of all of our previous acharyas, especially His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada, we have direct personal access to hear directly from Krishna, speaking to us through Uddhava. The most confidential truths. One time in 1966, Srila Prabhupada brought a small handful of devotees to the Anand Ashram in upstate New York. That was Dr. Mishra's ashram. And Prabhupada would speak there and lead kirtan there, and just brought a few of his devotees from 26 2nd Avenue. And one of his first devotees, Hayagriva Prabhu, he was sleeping outside in this beautiful ashram. So many trees and landscape, completely quiet. He was laying under the stars. It was a very warm, starlit night. And he had a dream. In that dream, he saw Krishna speaking the Bhagavad-Gita to Arjuna. Such a wonderful dream. Then the dream switched, where he saw Srila Prabhupada teaching him, Hayagriva Prabhu, Bhagavad-Gita. And he woke up. The next morning he told Srila Prabhupada about this dream. He said, I saw Krishna teaching Arjuna Bhagavad-Gita, then I saw you teaching me Bhagavad-Gita, and in my dream I understood both, they were exactly the same thing. Seeing Krishna teaching Arjuna and seeing you teaching me was exactly the same thing. Srila Prabhupada smiled and he said, yes, you have understood properly. So when we hear from our Guru, it's the same as Arjuna hearing from Krishna. With these words, I am going to transition this class into Shamsundar Prabhu's book release. Krishna revealed so many beautiful truths to all of us through Arjuna, his dear associate. And then he revealed so many divine truths through Uddhava, his most dear associate. Srila Prabhupada, when he performed his pastimes in this world, there was only a very small inner circle of people that were directly with him. 95% perhaps of the devotees
of our movement hardly ever, if ever, spoke a single word directly to Srila Prabhupada. Our association with Prabhupada was reading his books and serving his mission in separation. And if we were really fortunate, we would get to sit in the audience of one of his classes. That was rare. That was extremely special. But nobody expected to talk to Prabhupada. Even devotees, because Prabhupada was so busy, in the very beginning, Prabhupada spent a lot of time with everyone in San Francisco and 22nd Avenue in New York. But as the movement began to expand, it was not possible. Most people in our movement were even ordered, do not write a letter to Prabhupada. Because it takes so much of his time to answer letters, and he has thousands of followers. He wants to write books. He wants to spread Krishna consciousness all over the world. If you have any questions, you ask those people who are the senior devotees, the leaders. The leaders of our movement, we would follow what they said. We would get our inquiries answered by them, all of our directions. And who are those devotees? Yes, the vast majority of Prabhupada's disciples never spoke a word to Prabhupada, and Prabhupada never directly, physically spoke a word to them. But those people were as empowered and were in the presence of Prabhupada as much as those who were traveling with Prabhupada for years, because they were learning to be the servant of the servant of the servant. They were hearing from Prabhupada's books, they were hearing from Prabhupada's tapes, and they were hearing from those devotees who Prabhupada spoke to. Like we're hearing, like Hayagriva was hearing. So to actually witness Srila Prabhupada from the perspective of Prabhupada's intimate inner circle of followers is one of the most beautiful blessings in our life. And Shamsundar Prabhu was on the highest level of association with Prabhupada, one of those intimate associates. 1966, he first heard about Srila Prabhupada. Yamuna Devi came back from New York. Mukunda Maharaj was writing to his best friend Shamsundar. And in January of 1967, Shamsundar was there at the airport in San Francisco to greet Srila Prabhupada. But he didn't just come to greet him like this. He had already organized this whole mantra rock dance before Prabhupada even came. You heard of the mantra rock dance? It was very historical. I'm going to give you a small interpretation of my understanding of history. When Srila Prabhupada came to Butler, Pennsylvania, he was trying to understand the psychology and the way Americans think from Sally Agarwal. When he came to New York, very difficult, living in the Bowery and so many places. But he established 26th Avenue, and in the counterculture of the Lower East Side of New York City, he actually established Krishna consciousness. And it started spreading through New York City. When he went to San Francisco, through the mantra rock dance, and through being in Haight-Ashbury, the counterculture capital, Srila Prabhupada established Krishna consciousness strongly in the entire nation of America. And then when Srila Prabhupada went to London, and his devotees connected with the Beatles and were recording best-selling songs of the Hare Krishna mantra, Srila Prabhupada actually established Krishna consciousness throughout the entire Western world. And then when Srila Prabhupada came to India in 1970, he re-established Krishna consciousness in India. So before he even met Srila Prabhupada directly, Shyam Sundar Prabhu was working so hard, but for him it was ecstatic fun. But hard work. He was chasing rhinos with the Swami before he met the Swami. He had the most famous rock and roll bands in America all ready to play a concert free to raise funds for Srila Prabhupada and set the stage for thousands of people to come to hear Srila Prabhupada directly speak. And Srila Prabhupada saw that in him. Such an enthusiasm, such an adventure, such faith, such inspiration. So from the very beginning, he became one of Srila Prabhupada's closest followers. Srila Prabhupada had him carve the first Jagannath deities. He had Shyam Sundar make, Prabhupada with a pencil drew a picture of a Rathayatra chariot and had Shyam Sundar make the first chariot. In so many ways, Shyam Sundar was right in Prabhupada's room at his side, spreading Krishna consciousness throughout San Francisco and throughout America. Then Srila Prabhupada sent Shyam Sundar Prabhu, Malati Devi, Saraswati Devi, Yamuna Devi, Janaki Devi, Mukunda Maharaj, and Gurudas Prabhu, all to London. And he was right there, having letter exchanges with Prabhupada practically every few days, getting direct instructions and directions. And then Prabhupada came to London. Before Prabhupada even came to London, he was chasing these rhinos. Rhino means rhinoceros. The Beatles were the most famous people on the planet at that time. He was living with them. He was eating with them, having kirtan with them, making records with them that became top-selling records, going on television shows because their Radha Krishna band was so famous. That's when Prabhupada came. And Prabhupada was so pleased, living with John Lennon, with Prabhupada. He was in charge of building the first temple in London for Prabhupada. And then when Prabhupada wanted to come to India, he called for Shyam Sundar Prabhu, who was one of the main organizers for the Cross Maidan festival here in Mumbai, which was the single strongest thing to really shake the whole country of India to understand the Hare Krishna movement. What is this? It was that festival. Srila Prabhupada chose Shyam Sundar to go to Russia with. Srila Prabhupada chose Shyam Sundar to be his own personal private secretary, traveling everywhere in the world with him, helping him in every situation. So all those experiences, which we will never know, of being with Prabhupada, now we have the opportunity to be there with him. When he was Srila Prabhupada's secretary, he used to write beautiful, poetic, devotional letters to our whole society of what's happening with Srila Prabhupada. And all over the world, there wasn't that many temples in those days. Everybody was waiting for Shyam Sundar's letters to come. But somehow or other, they were just simple little letters. There was no emails or anything. I don't think anybody ever kept them because they just expected they'd be coming. Just a piece of paper. And I remember even in those days hearing Shyam Sundar and Hayagriva were the best writers in all of ISKCON. But Shyam Sundar Prabhu, he was keeping the whole movement up to date with the inner circle of what Prabhupada was doing. And now with this book, which he's been planning to write for about 40 years, he's written it. And he's prepared for 40 years to write this book. Through his prayers, through his reading other types of literatures to get his style, and through perhaps the most extensive research of what Srila Prabhupada did, who he was with, what he said, in every incident that he gives us in his book. Now, especially the first volume, which is about San Francisco and London, some of the devotees in India may think this is really wild. But it is as it is. It was really wild. He doesn't sanitize things. He just tells it like it was, according to his vision. And then in the next volume, his coming to India with Srila Prabhupada. Just a handful of devotees. And in the third volume, his traveling around the world with Srila Prabhupada. So probably 80% of the devotees here were not here last night. Just, for your presentation. Probably 85%. Just, for your presentation. Probably 85%. How many were here? How many were at the Ratha Yatra last night for the lecture? How many were not? With these few words that I've spoken, I want to request everyone to buy this book because it's worth millions and millions of times more than whatever you can give for it. And and bhakti is reciprocal. When we buy a book and read a book, we're actually reciprocating with the devotee who has given that book. When somebody's giving a class and we actually come and we stay awake and we listen, we're reciprocating with the love of that devotee. Nothing is just ritualistic or formalities. So now we are going to hear directly from His Grace, Shyam Sundar Prabhu.
Thank you. He's got another appointment somewhere. Oh, you stay here. how fitting it is, how perfect it is that this book, my book, should be launched here in Mumbai. Bombay, I'll never get used to the word Mumbai. It's always been Bombay for me. For two reasons. As I talked about last night, the one person, after Prabhupada of course, who's more responsible for this book appearing and happening, the one person most responsible for that is Radhanath Maharaj. Thank you so much. The second reason it's so fitting that this book should be launched in Mumbai is because I came here in October of 1970 with Srila Prabhupada and 19 other Westerners to reintroduce Krishna consciousness into India. We were Prabhupada's instruments, 20 of us. And there was kind of a competition. We came to Bombay first, and I loved this city. I knew that the Swami would be sending people out all over India to take charge in other places, but I wanted to stay here. He would ask me, Hare Krishna, he would ask me, well, where would you like to go? And I would say, over and over, let me stay in Bombay, please. So from October 1970 until June of 71, I was in charge here in Bombay. So this has always been the pearl in my oyster. So we're gathered here all together in this early January 2018. And it's nearly 51 years exactly since the day in San Francisco when Malati and I met, first laid our eyes upon Bhaktivedanta Swami's incredibly beautiful form, January 17th, 1967. And how wonderful it is to have survived this long to see the unfolding of Srila Prabhupada's dreams. I have no real qualification to speak to you about high philosophy or anything really. And my only qualification perhaps to be with you today is that I was a witness, a close-up and intimate witness to Srila Prabhupada's historically unique appearance among us. I was the errant but capable child at his feet in San Francisco as he unfolded his plan and taught us the ropes. One of his troops in the pirate band, and then his point man raising havoc in far-off lands behind enemy lines. Then I was an officer and had troops of my own. And then most blessed of all, the secretary, the right-hand man to my spiritual master. For nearly 2 years, I ate, slept, worked, and played at the side of our master, never out of hearing from the tiny bell he rang to call me. And now, by Krishna's grace, I have survived to be the scribe, the chronicler, to tell the story of our master's deeds. Not just his deeds, but I've painted the strokes of his face, his ever-moving eyes, and the grace of his hands as they rise and fall, reject and beckon and guide us to the promised land. Over the past more than 4 years now, I've written 3 big volumes of a book called Chasing Rhinos with the Swami. This one. To recall, to remember, and go deep, deep inside and to relive and describe as best I can the 7 years at Srila Prabhupada's feet. You have to remember, go back in your minds, that at that time, 50 years ago in the United States and America, India was a faraway place. No one had ever been to India. Srila Prabhupada was the first Indian person I ever met. India was a mysterious place of yogis and dancing and color and wealth that was only read about in books. But little bits of the philosophy from India began trickling into the Western world in those days, and we could see right away, boy, these people may have the answers to life's questions. So this was the scene. No one had ever been to India. There was no communications, global communications yet, or global travel. It was very rare. So when we first saw Srila Prabhupada, it was something gloriously unique. No one had ever seen such a person, the Swami. So I'm just going to read a few passages from those first impressions. Bhaktivedanta Swami is the most attractive person I've ever seen. And this guy only works for Krishna. He's the messenger. So how beautiful Krishna must be. The Swami's physical beauty seems ever fresh and energetic, fueled by a special energy, like the fluid grace you see in youth. The Swami's eyes, his large mouth, his facial expressions, they all play together with everything he says. He would break mid-sentence, a dramatic pause, like returning to the tambura drone in an Indian raga. He seems to know everything, and I can't take my ears away. And we said, okay, Swamiji, you've convinced us that Krishna is God, and we are his tiny servants, bound to him in what you're calling devotional service. But now, what do we do? And this is the Swami's famous reply. We should always be enthusiastic to try for capturing the rhinoceros. That way, if we fail, everyone will say, never mind, nobody can catch a rhinoceros anyway. And if we succeed, then everyone will say, just see what a wonderful thing they have done. So more than anything else, I remember this, that Bhaktivedanta Swami instilled in his early students one overriding idea: to chase the rhino. Dare to pursue the biggest goals for Krishna. And this was the spirit and the subject and the object of all of our activities. Chasing the rhino became the hue and cry of the first generation of the Swami's starstruck disciples. He said two things. You become yourself Krishna conscious, and you spread Krishna consciousness. That's all. Moreover, you become Krishna conscious by spreading Krishna consciousness. Now this is the secret. You get two for the price of one. Chase the rhino for Krishna, become Krishna conscious. Very simple. So in those early days, we had no models, no history, no maps, no books of instructions, no well-marked trails. We had only the Swami, his words, his personal example. How he had chased the rhino to America as an old man, with no money, friends, and no plan, really, under Krishna's protection. We saw his photos standing with Indian heads of state. We saw copies of his letters to presidents and popes. He never minced words. Each day he said to us, what I am telling you will save humankind. You must help me change the world. This is a passage from the early book. Swamiji had explained in a lecture that Krishna most appreciates devotees who risk the most on his behalf. And if you risk everything for Krishna, he must personally intervene to remove the obstacles to your risky service. Now, most of us in the Haight-Ashbury in 1967 were there at great risk anyway. We gave up the comforts of homes, educations, careers, and society to become outcasts searching for meaning. Many of us had already at a young age traveled widely. We'd taken great risks with drugs and the law, and we carved out an independent lifestyle. So we immediately connected with the Swami's courage. We understood his message that to get Krishna you must take risk. You can say that we were all on a great adventure with the Swami, and it was the most exhilarating adventure of our lives. The Swami was this beautiful creature, this great yogi and saint, the highest man we'd ever met. But he pierced the veil of awe and distance and separateness to embrace our hearts like his own children. Another passage from the book. Swamiji sits lotus-style on a thin mattress on the floor behind a low coffee table. Morning sun pouring through the window. I mark his radiance, his beaming, wide-eyed face, his eyes looking straight into mine, the swollen bow curve and tremble of his dark, full lips around big teeth. So beautiful, I nearly faint. Motioning me now to scoot over and sit beside him behind the low table. His grace, his fragrance, which I later learned is sandalwood. He slips his glasses from a little case and takes his pen from another case, and brushing my arm with his shoulder, the soft rustle of cotton and jolts of electricity shoot through my neck, and I am overwhelmed with well-being. Do you know bookkeeping? He asks me. So this was the Swami's management style. And chasing the rhinos is risky, high adventure. That's one thing, the theme of our activity. But the activity itself should be practical. Bhaktivedanta Swami harnessed what little practical talent or skills that we had and personally fit them into the larger task. He made you feel important, that your tiny service had huge consequences. And little by little, the Swami gave us someone to love, something to do, and something to hope for. The three ingredients, the three secrets to happiness and successful life. Another passage from the book. Right off, one of the things I liked best about the Swami, he made you laugh. He was always calm and content, sure. But more than that, he was jolly. Even discussing very serious subjects, there was often the play of a smile around his lips, a chuckle to make a point, chuckle by chuckle, building our inner glee. And then, suddenly, the guffaw, the quick delight. And when he's really surprised by the overtly absurd, a full rounded belly laugh trembles his body and tears stream from his tight squinted eyes. He told us, you will feel yourself transcendently joyful in spite of your present physical body. Just like if you eat, you'll know yourself that you are eating, you are feeling strength, you are getting enlightened. Similarly, if you take this process of Krishna consciousness, in spite of your present physical body, you'll know that you are having something transcendental. And that feeling will come with you. Krishna is always jolly. And if you join his society, you will also become jolly. Another passage. Whenever you came to the Swami's door, your heart was in your throat. This feeling never left me, even after 1,000 trips to that door. There was a heightened sense that something marvelous was about to occur, a tingling in the blood. You never knew what to expect, just that it would be a wonderful surprise, whatever happened. He'd be sitting behind his little table or in his rocker clicking his beads, dressed in saffron, maybe with a white sweater, sunlight through the south-facing window shining on his freshly oiled head, and his face a radiant gold, emerging from some deep bliss. And he would welcome you, no matter what hour of day or night. In early 1967, with the San Francisco temple, the Swami now had 2 temples in the world. By 1970, just 3 years later, there were nearly 50 temples of Krishna consciousness around the globe. How could this happen? What is the secret of such success? How did Srila Prabhupada manage this rapid, vast expansion? There was no email, no phones, only letters, the mails, which may take a month or more to reach you in those early days. So we can say that Prabhupada managed by his instructions, by his personal instructions, in the form of handwritten or typed letters, personal letters, letters between two parties, the manager and the managed, between the Swami and me, or Malati, or Mukunda, or Satsvarupa, or Brahmananda, whoever and wherever that person was. Detailed letters, everything you needed to know, not only to grow in Krishna consciousness, but also to manage your local affairs. I'll read parts of a long letter I got from the Swami in early October 1968, about 1 month after we had arrived in London. Just to give you an idea of how our great general managed things in great detail. My dear Shyamasundar, please accept my blessings. This is early October 1968. Since I received your letter dated September 26th, that was like 2 weeks before, I have not heard anything from you. So I'm very much anxious to know about the London affairs. You will be glad to know that Shivananda has already opened our ISKCON Radhakrishna temple in Berlin. The copy of the letter which I am sending just now to him is also enclosed herewith. Please find. I do not know why there is so much difficulty in finding out a house to rent. In other words, Prabhupada instilled the spirit of transcendental competition between the God brothers and God sisters. Well, so-and-so is doing this. Why aren't you? Spurring us on to greater efforts. This was Prabhupada's management style. Regarding the money, $1,655, dispatched from Canada, I am very glad to learn that you have traced out the money and it is now safely lodged in your external sterling account. In my last letter, I asked you to deposit the money in my account in London, expecting that I may be called to visit London, but I can guess that immediately there is no such prospect of my going to London. Therefore, I am asking you to transfer the money to New York for being deposited in my account number 042160131 with the First National City Bank, Grand Street Branch, Grand Street at Bowery, New York, 13, New York. I immediately require about $10,000 for paying bills of Dai Nippon in Tokyo and Macmillan in New York. So a good example of Prabhupada's practical money management. He knew where, he had about 20 bank accounts, and he knew where every penny was in every account. He kept all the little checkbooks and account books in his little white purse. No one ever knew how much money Prabhupada had, but he knew right to the penny. He's also informing us of his victory in printing Bhagavad-Gita, finally, at last, and he's slightly disappointed in our progress. This is only 6 weeks after we were in Britain. But he's spurring us on to try hard, since there is no prospect for me coming there. Here in L.A., the Kirtan party headed by Tamal Krishna and others are doing very nicely. They are selling Back to Godhead, sometimes more than 100 copies, minimum 50 copies, and collecting donations $30 to $50 every day. So are you getting some collection by holding kirtan in different places? There must be some source of income, otherwise how you can maintain yourself there. And we were barely surviving. We had no money. More transcendental competition, stirring us to try harder. Others are victorious. Why aren't you? I am also trying to get one secretarial office in the Church Center of the United Nations with a view to confer with the heads of the United Nations, both political and ecclesiastical, to propagate our Krishna consciousness. So he's busy chasing rhinos. What are you guys doing? I have sent some drawings to Jamuna Devi for the certificates, and I hope she is taking proper care. I understand Malati is having some rheumatic condition, and it is causing pain and numbness. The best thing is to take hot baths and massage with camphor oil. And if it is too much painful, use Sloan's liniment. The best thing is to consult with some expert physician. The Ayurvedic medicine, which I could recommend, is probably not available in London, but if there is any Ayurvedic shop, let me know and I shall recommend some medicine. The best thing is to chant Hare Krishna loudly. This is Prabhupada's very personal concern for each and every one of his soldiers in the field, his love for his family. And as always, he ends with, please let me know replies for all the points raised herein, and offer my blessings to Mukunda, Janaki, Malati, Jamuna, and Gurudas, hoping you are all well, your ever well-wisher, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. So this managing Srila Prabhupada's explosive expansion was the hardest work we'd ever done, before or since. Here's a paragraph from the book from our early days in London in June of 1969. This is almost 1 year later after being in London. We're still only 6 devotees, basically. And there are 4 or 5 interested young Britishers. But we're all living in scattered suburbs, distant suburbs around London. And Prabhupada wanted us to have a Rath Yatra. So I'm building this huge Rath car in my backyard in a distant suburb of London, almost single-handedly. We had just rented a 5-story building in downtown London, which had to be completely demolished and rebuilt inside, major remodeling. So here's a quote from the book. So my schedule went like this. Work all day on the Rath car in Balham, drive to London at dark, work all night at Berry Place, where the temple was, then drive back to Balham at dawn to sleep for a few hours. This went on day after day through June and July of 1969. Mukunda and Gurudas are furiously pounding the pavement to get planning permissions for Berry Place from the Camden Council and a Rath Yatra parade permit from Scotland Yard. Also, they are trying to raise money to satisfy my unending thirst for wood and bolts out in Balham. Hey Mukunda, I need 100 more 6-inch carriage bolts with nuts and 200 1-inch washers. What's more, we needed money to pay the Berry Place rent, plus the rent on our individual apartments. And we have to maintain our Sankirtan program on the streets and distribute back to Godheads. Where did we get the energy? We got it from Krishna, that's for sure. And knowing that Prabhupada would be coming soon. I appreciated like never before the magic of Krishna's energy, realizing how Krishna must endow the Swami with his relentless energy. Swamiji had told us that Krishna gives his devotees the transcendental power to perform inhuman feats in their desire for devotional service. Okay then, Krishna, here's the deal. I want to please my spiritual master, and there's so much work to do. So you may help me or not help me, but without your help, I will surely fail, and Srila Prabhupada will not be happy. I just this last month came through London for the first time in several years. I spent 3 weeks in the UK in November. And as I traveled around the country, I was overwhelmed by how big Krishna consciousness has become in the UK. I can see now, too, from this perspective, how this is all largely due to the Indian community in UK. The Indian community has now merged with the British devotees to create a spectacular Krishna conscious presence in Great Britain. But you have to remember back, when we first arrived in 1968 in UK, the Indian community was quite small compared to today. And many, if not most of the Indians living in London in those days were recent refugees from Africa. Some of these nations were having terrific political problems like Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Zimbabwe. And many Indian people in those countries left to go to live in England. And they were living closely and together, but in distant suburban neighborhoods of London. They weren't culturally or spiritually organized yet. And there were a couple of small temples, Hindu temples in homes, but far away from downtown London. So when these Indian people did meet us, they weren't sure about us. We were kind of pushy. We were on fire. We were dreaming these huge dreams. And what was this all about? What were we all about? This is not the way Hindus act. So they were rightly skeptical in general. We started making some friends among the Indian community, and they became more and more convinced by us as we had dinners in their homes and we told them about Bhaktivedanta Swami. But for the most part, we struggled on without much assistance from the Indian community. Now, yesterday we celebrated this Rath Yatra festival at Shivaji Park, and who knows, maybe it was the 1000th ISKCON Rath Yatra since that first Rath Yatra in San Francisco, which you can read about in the book. But our first Rath Yatra in London in the summer of 1969 was one of the most memorable in history for the very fact that it failed. We built this huge Rath car, much higher than this room even. The biggest Rath car ever built, I think it was. And I built it almost single-handedly. We had some boys coming to help after school and so on, but for the most part, I built this thing myself. And we had no money, so I had to take shortcuts like use only one bolt where there should be 2 bolts. And we were 15 miles from down where the parade was supposed to be at Hyde Park. So on the morning of Rath Yatra, we somehow pushed and pulled with my car this huge Rath car 15 miles through the back streets of London overnight. It took us all night long. And we pulled up to the start at Marble Arch in Hyde Park. And this was going to be the first Rath Yatra in history. And all the Indian community came. We advertised it widely. George Harrison himself announced it on the radio. Thousands of people came. The first time that so many Indian and British people were meeting for one festival. And as we took off down the street, the Rath car went about 100 yards, and the right front wheel collapsed. The whole cart went over on its side. I was so exhausted, I just said, "Can you guys deal with this? I have to go sleep." They had to dismantle. It caused the largest traffic jam in London history. Right in the middle of the main street, in front of Hyde Park. Park Lane was blocked. So they dismantled it piece by piece, and the parade went on. They went on to Trafalgar Square carrying the deities. But I was broken-hearted by this. So I got a letter. I was totally devastated after all that work. I was practically suicidal that I had failed so completely. Then I got this letter from Srila Prabhupada, and he put it all into perspective. This is his letter. When I first heard that the wheels of the car collapsed, it was so great a shock to me that the whole day I was sick and morose. And now, after receiving this letter and your pictures, I am very much enlivened. The car was on the road, and the photo was taken with a multitude of people. That is your success. And as a result of this collapse, you have got now the sympathy of the Indian community. As well as all the people of London. I think we may take it as Krishna's grace that the difficulty took place at the very beginning of the procession and not later on when the Ratha was in a more populated area. So do not feel discouraged at all. By Krishna's plan, everything will come out for the best. This is Srila Prabhupada. So after the collapse of Lord Jagannath's car, Srila Prabhupada was right. The London Indian community woke up, and they saw that we were for real. And they came forward in a huge wave of outstretched arms, desiring to help spread Srila Prabhupada's movement in the UK. And a few weeks later, Srila Prabhupada arrives in London. Here's a description of his arrival. September 11th, 1969, Lufthansa Flight 234 arrives from Hamburg at 1340. It's 75 degrees Fahrenheit at Heathrow. The sliding gates part, and in he strides among us. This is 1 year after we had left him. We're seeing him for the first time in 1 year. He strides in among us, laughing and touching our heads as we bow. Garlands piled around his shoulders. Like thirsty refugees in from the desert, we drink in his presence. Ah, Srila Prabhupada, our glorious spiritual master, is here. For the Swami's arrival in London, the timing is perfect. His movement has a strong foothold in Britain. Krishna's name is being heard daily over the radio, on the television, in newspapers, magazines, by millions of people throughout the land. Swamiji's landing in the UK to greet his old disciples and meet his many new ones, and to deliver what I considered his most powerful interview yet to the world press. And then be whisked off in a Rolls Royce with a liveried driver to one of the poshest mansions in England, the guest of one of the most famous people in the world. Prabhupada's 5-story temple in the heart of London is under lavish construction, and money is flowing in. 8 months ago, the Swami had written us, "You have mentioned a very encouraging invitation that my visit there will be the biggest event in London since the time of the Roman invasion." Actually, this will be so. This time there is no question of invasion. But this time, if England is prepared, they will receive something sublime, which they cannot produce in their country, neither in Manchester, Glasgow, nor Edinburgh. So our dreams of that big event were realized that day as Prabhupada arrived in Great Britain like a king. And a few days after Srila Prabhupada arrives, the London Indian community meets A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada for the first time in a public meeting at Camden Town Hall. And the rest is history. And this is another quote from the book. Many of the Indian families we had met over the past year were there at Camden Town Hall that night, getting their first glimpse of Srila Prabhupada. As usual, he knocked them out. And now they began to understand the disciplined fervor of this general's London army. He was the real thing. We sincerely loved these people from India, but found that many Hindus had fixed ideas about their religion and considered Krishna to be just one God among many. Now, after hearing Prabhupada and seeing him so regal, so self-assured, so authentic and powerful, we sensed an awakening among them that they should take his movement seriously and maybe change their own beliefs. So along with the adventures and the fun and the laughter, the utter jolliness of working for Srila Prabhupada in this way, we got to experience and see firsthand the magic of Krishna consciousness, Krishna's magic. We saw $100 bills falling from the sky on Ashbury Street in San Francisco. What about the man waiting in the queue in a bank in downtown London who knows me from San Francisco and just happens to be a real estate agent who has a 6-story empty building a few paces off Oxford Street and a block from the British Museum, and for a very cheap rent? Or the bolt of lightning that convinced George to print the Krishna book? Or the appearance of 4-foot marble Radha and Krishna deities 2 days before their installation? Do you know that story? How the deities appeared in London? This is magic. I'll just tell it briefly. We had been working probably 8 months, something like 8 months, to build this fabulous temple in downtown London, right in the center of London, block from the British Museum, 100 feet from Oxford Street. We worked so hard to build this thing. Every square inch of the interior, 4 walls and the ceiling were covered with wood, minutely carved and fitted wood. It was a huge endeavor, beautiful place, but it took a lot of work. We built the temple for Krishna, Radha and Krishna to appear, and then Prabhupada came in August, late August, 1969, and the temple wasn't ready. There were no deities, so he just stayed, and each day we worked and worked and worked. Finally, he told us about November. He said, "Look, I can't stay here forever while you guys build this temple. I'm leaving on December 15th, and that's final." This was like 2 or 3 weeks before we had to have the temple finished, and there had to be deities on the temple. Now, the last thing you build in the temple is the altar. So I was building the altar and the background behind all the deities. I wasn't that concerned about deities. I mean, that's someone else's problem to find the deities. But the altar was so magnificent. George spent thousands of pounds to buy us this wonderful marble, very expensive and elaborate altar, and at the time was ticking down. End of November, beginning of December, 2 weeks away. Prabhupada's leaving, and we have no deities to put on this altar. What are we going to do? We have to have some deity. Radha and Krishna, he wants this to be a Radha. We're called the Radha Krishna Temple. We're a rock group called the Radha Krishna Temple. We have no deities of Radha and Krishna. We had some little tiny ones, but they're not going to look right up on that huge altar. So I said, look, I'm building this thing. You guys worry about getting the deities. So from day to day, we didn't know. I mean, December 6th, 5th, 6th, 7th, every day passed by. Prabhupada was writing to his godbrothers in India, "Please send deities by air cargo. We will pay." We sent teams out all over London looking for deities. There wasn't such a thing in London in those days. Even you couldn't find Indian grocery shops yet. What to speak of worship paraphernalia and deities. But I always thought, well, it'll happen. Krishna will send them. Not worried about that. I just got to finish this altar. And then one day, Prabhupada called me to his room. I think it was probably around December 5th, maybe 7th. he said, look, we have just got a phone call from a gentleman in East London. He's the secretary of a small temple there called East London Hindu Center. And he has requested me to come out there and look at these. They have just received deities from Jaipur, large marble deities. And one of the little finger on Radharani's left finger is broken. And they want me to look at the deities to see if it's okay. They want to get my blessing. So I said, okay, well, let's go. So we got the van. We had a van. And Mukunda and Tamal Krishna, Jamuna, one other boy, and Prabhupada. We drove out there. And we walked into their small home. And there was barely room for us in the parlor in front. And they began talking away in Hindi. We didn't have any clue what was going on, but Prabhupada was Mr. Charm. He was charming and delightful, asking them about their families. We could tell that. And after some time, the man said, Mr. Goyal was his name, he told someone to go in the back room, and they brought out this big wooden box and opened it. Oh, there was Krishna, big, beautiful white marble Krishna. And then they brought Radharani out. And Prabhupada looked at the little broken finger, like that a little bit. And then they started talking some more, blah, 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 blah. And then Prabhupada looked at Tamal Krishna and he said, just lift Krishna, see how heavy he is. So Tamal went over there, and with great effort, he lifted the deity up. It's not that heavy, Prabhupada said, take him out to the van. And before these guys could even react, he said, Shamsudar, you and Mukunda take Radharani out. So we took them out to the van, and I turned around, and Prabhupada was walking out the door. He got in the van, and we started driving away. So another thing Prabhupada says on the trip back to Berry Place, Krishna has played a great trick. Just like when Krishna's mother tried to tie him with ropes because he is such a rascal stealing the butter, and by his magic power he makes the rope too short. So Mother Jasoda brings more rope, and still it is too short. Like that, another trick has been played. Krishna wanted to come here, so this chip on Radharani's finger is just another Krishna's trick. And we have captured Radha and Krishna. Srila Prabhupada, you're always doing the impossible. You're the greatest magician, Tamal Krishna says. I am not magician. My only credit is that I am presenting Krishna as he is. The magic will act as soon as you become a pure devotee of Krishna. The magic will be done by Krishna, not by me or you. So this volume 1 is filled with hundreds of stories like this, displaying Srila Prabhupada's amazing magic. We don't have much time, I suppose, huh? Can I tell a couple little stories from India? Okay. This is actually volume 2. You're not going to get that one for a while. I've just finished editing the first edit on this volume 2 last week in GEV. But just to tickle your fancy a little bit, I'll read a couple of passages from volume 2. This will be the one you like the most because it's about India. Prabhupada came here with his dancing white elephants, October 1970. Bombay. Here's some passages from Bombay. Prabhupada would take his morning walks in the hanging gardens on Malabar Hill, where other prominent gentlemen took their daily stroll. From the moment we'd start up wide stairs to the park, big industrialists, government leaders, the cream of Bombay society would rush to greet him and try to touch his feet. There was a casual imperial cadence to Prabhupada's walks at hanging gardens. Prabhupada strutting with his shoulders cocked, loose in his hips, like a Lippinzaner purebred, the weight on his heels, feet flicking to the side. Bhaktivedanta Swami was the talk of the town. Here's another one from Mumbai. As Prabhupada spoke on those golden mornings, the raucous caw of a crow outside, coo, coo, coo of pigeons in the courtyard, we are mesmerized by changing expressions across his golden face, like the play of cumulus and sunlight over a varied landscape. One moment he's from another world so impenetrable to us, self-contained king of all he surveys. And next he's tossing a ball to you in a friendly game of verbal catch, maybe a fastball to see if you can catch it. He might break from describing Krishna's vast cosmic design to a real concern for your upset stomach. Just try a little bicarbonate of soda, 1 spoonful in water. One little last one, Mumbai. Prabhupada's energy and vitality seemed to get stronger and stronger with each day in India. He was constantly talking to people. People would come. We never saw him sleep. He would take only a little food. He would encourage us to eat huge amounts, but he took only a little. We were so excited, full of expectation of great things ahead. Of course, there were down periods when we all felt like, this is too difficult, living like this. I just want to go back where there are dishwashing machines and hot water. But living this close to Prabhupada just made everything so easy and so light. The whole thing was painless because it was so much fun. We didn't have anything. Sure, sometimes we were chauffeured in limousines and we ate huge banquets, but next day we'd be packed like sardines in a garlic-breathed train, eating a handful of chickpeas. The jolly mood snared us deeper and deeper into Prabhupada's tender net. We could also see the joy that he himself experienced while sporting in this world. We would go to some meeting, and he would be very grave and stern, maybe chastising his own countrymen for allowing Krishna consciousness to fade in the world. And then we'd return to our quarters and sit down there with Prabhupada. And he would recall something funny that happened at the program and break into uproarious laughter. So anyway, I've taken you through a little tour, through about 1,500 pages. Just a few highlights. This huge basket of jewels called Chasing Rhinos with the Swami. And I guess if there's one paragraph in everything I've written that sort of sums up the whole thing, it's this. His little bell tinkling even in sleep has become my wake-up call to happiness, transcending all other previous meanings of happiness. I cannot see enough of Prabhupada. The physical beauty of his face, especially his face, captures my eyes from morning till night, and I feast on his endless allure. He trusts me. He depends on me. How can I possibly deserve such mercy? He is in my care, I thought, forcing me to rise beyond all other considerations. I'm his audience, in a way. He seems to be energized by my laugh. He tries things out. He floats ideas. I'm his sounding board, his straight man. What do you think, Shyamasundar? He catches my glance from across the stage, raises an eyebrow like, how am I doing? His smile and his laugh, especially his laugh, are all that I live for. So for the past 4 years, Srila Prabhupada has lived with me in this way, deeply, right here. I thought it was going to take about 6 weeks to write down all of these memories. I thought, man, I don't have much. I can't remember much. That's 50 years ago. And I wrote for 3 years, every day, sitting down from every morning. Sometimes I would look up out my window. It would be dark, And I would look down, I'm still in my pajamas from the night before. A lot of Prabhupada has always told us that Krishna is the memory. Krishna says, I am memory. Everything came back somehow or other. Even in my dreams, I'd hear Prabhupada dictating next morning's work. I'd wake up, that's what I do, yeah. All right. Anyway, that's it. I'm self-publishing this book so that the profits from these sales will go for printing the next, will finance printing the next volume. I'm 75 years old now, so I don't really want to work anymore. So this is my only income is from these books, to print more books so I can travel and preach to you guys all over the world about Srila Prabhupada. I guess there's nothing much else to say. I just pray that you will help me in this loving endeavor. We're going to set up the book stall, I think, in the front courtyard after this meeting. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you guys so much. It's all for you. What's next? Any announcements?
Questions and answers, but people might start leaving, so
yeah,
it might be good for you to manage.
I better get down to man the booth. All in the merchandising.